All right, welcome everyone. My name is Matteo. I'm a security specialist at Elastic. We are a company behind the ELK stack, or the Elastic Stack. It's a platform with open source roots, with many different use cases, and it's used a lot to ingest security events. So if you think about security information event management, being able to visualize, observe what's happening from all the different devices that an organization has to monitor, that's what we do. And in the recent past, in the last few years, we have introduced a security solution that also adds endpoint security and cloud security. So in addition of observing, we also protect and prevent different types of attacks. So for today, I'm going to be talking about what I see, that the common trends I see many organizations do, primarily in North America, to defend themselves from bad guys and bad actors. And there is quite a lot of commonality, going from the East Coast to the West Coast, and things that actually work. So my approach for this presentation is really to talk about approaches that we see work in helping organizations minimize the risk, manage the risk, and protect themselves from adversaries. As a security professional, when you work for an organization, you always have to balance the boundary between risk and growth. For the longest time, we've seen the security team has always seemed almost as an impediment to growth, slowing things down. Whenever I need to log into an application, I need to use the multi-factor and all those things. And some people hate it because they see, oh my God, I know this is slowing me down. I could be so much more efficient if I didn't have to do all these things, all these extra things that the security team is asking me to do. So what we are seeing in the last couple of years recently, really, is a trend that started with this growth in digitization. So what I mean with digitization, if you look at how you interact with different products or services that you use today, you use technology, maybe a web application, a website, a mobile app. So these technologies are now central in how organizations generate revenue. And they're acknowledging that security must be part of that. And we're seeing that chief information security officers, they start to report now to the engineering leader or the CEO, so to the growth part of the organization. They're no longer something separate, a necessary evil that you need to have for compliance, but are part of what's needed to help organizations grow. And to manage risk, we see that organizations, they tend to use way too many tools, right? We see 45 plus different security tools that they have to use, different to manage. There is a shortage of security professionals. And of course, the geopolitical risk that we have, that we're facing every day with different wars and things like that. So there is good in all of these. And the first thing I want to show you is that organizations now, they start monitoring their applications and their infrastructure, not only looking at the uptime and performance, but they also start thinking about the cost of downtime that is caused by cyber threats. It's really the same thing. If you have an e-commerce site that you use to sell your products as a company, and it stops working, whether because of a bug, of an outage, or a cyber attack, the end result is the same. You lose revenue. You may lose customers. So organizations are becoming more proactive, and they also look at security as a way to help them generate revenue. So security professionals now are becoming something that is seen as something helpful as part of the revenue organization. So for the framework the framework I'm going to use for this talk, we'll talk about three different aspects: technology, process, and people. So as an organization, you have two different types of assets. You have your team members, your people, you have technology that you can acquire, and then processes that basically define how you're going to use the assets you have available. You can balance all these three, right? You can try to do everything without technology, or you can try to do everything just with technology without people, but really you need all three. And the outcome really is to balance these three to reduce your operational risk. So I'm going to cover three topics today. The first one is really a foundational requirement. If you think about what organizations can do to protect themselves, to protect their assets from bad actors, is to gain visibility. You cannot protect what you don't observe. And that started with the introduction of an acronym that you probably have heard many times, Security Information Event Management, SIEM. And the whole idea behind SIEM is that you want to have a way, a central place, a central pane of glass that you use to visualize what's happening within your organization. That's still very applicable today. And that's really the first thing that organizations do, gain visibility. Once you gain visibility, you want to find ways to reduce as much as possible the time to protection. Ideally, you want to be able to prevent something immediately before any damage is done. The next best thing is something happens. An employee clicks on an email, like a phishing attack. You want to be able to detect that as soon as possible and trying to trace it back to make sure that no other employees have done the same. And the last part really is being able to manage all of these efficiently. You're dealing with small teams. I assume none of you have too many security professionals at your work that don't know what to do. There is always too much to do. I'm going to tell you what I see organizations do to manage their teams efficiently. So first, broad and deep visibility. So first of all, what should you observe? Ideally, you want to observe the entire attack surface. The attack surface describes anything that a bad actor could attack to gain access to your assets or intellectual property. And I use this photo to describe how the attack surface today includes a lot of clouds. This is a common trend that applies to all industries, all organizations I work with. At different levels of maturity, no one wants to get into a data center business anymore. No one wants to build a data center. Every organization has some initiative that involves moving workloads to the cloud. Many different benefits to that. That also includes challenges that come with it. How many of you have heard of the MITRE attack? Are you familiar with it? So the MITRE attack was introduced by MITRE, a government-funded organization, to catalog all the different techniques TTPs that we see adversaries commonly use. So these are all actions that if you see them in your environment, they may be tied to an ongoing attack. The MITRE attack can also be used the other way. See, where am I losing visibility? Am I able to catch all these techniques within my environments? What log sources should I ingest to be able to gain visibility? So this is a great framework to assess your coverage. What am I able to see within my environment? And it's also great for your security analysts whenever they see a detection alert come up. If that detection alert is tied to a MITRE attack technique, it can help them understand why would a bad actor do this? What would they gain? So it's really helpful for that reason as well. So I mentioned this earlier. 95% of new digital workloads by 2025 will be cloud native. So we know that the movement is there. So if you're thinking about what you should invest on when it comes to skill set, developing your skills, think about learning more about cloud, because that's the trajectory. That's where the industry is going. The cloud provides a lot of power and flexibility. It's very, very easy to stand up workloads, move workloads to the cloud, create an EC2 instance, share a file on the cloud in an S3 bucket. It also has a lot of challenges because it's too easy to do that, right? And it's also new to many people. Even if you are an expert today, for example, in AWS, suddenly your employer may say, okay, to reduce our risk, we want to have a multi-cloud strategy. We don't want to use just one cloud provider. You have to start using Azure or GCP. And guess what? Yes, they're similar, but they're different. And the chances that you do an error by misconfiguring it or not doing it right are pretty high, right? What's the good news in this? Because again, the topic of this presentation is like what's right in cybersecurity. Once you start deploying workloads to the cloud, you are no longer responsible from everything, starting with physical security. I still remember when I studied for my CSSP exam many years ago, there was a chapter that was all about physical security and sprinklers and fire prevention. And I was like, why do I need to study these and learn these? Because that was a thing at that time. If you need to build a data center, you need to think about everything, including physical security and how to restrict physical access and all of that. Once you move your workloads to the cloud, you delegate a lot of that work to the cloud provider. So this is an example with AWS. So everything you see at the bottom here, the responsibility for security of the cloud is delegated to the cloud provider of your choice. You only worry about the security of what you deploy in the cloud. So this has a significant implication of the work we do as security professionals. An example, one of the log sources that I see organizations paying more attention to now, because they start having the cycles to do that, is application logs, their application logs. This is something that in the past you wouldn't even think about because you were so busy chasing firewall switches and perimeter devices and cameras and all those things that you have to worry about. Now that you only worry about deploying your workloads, your applications to the cloud, you start thinking about, oh my God, applications make up the majority of the attack surface I'm responsible of. So I should be paying attention to those, right? This applies also to SaaS. So this is not specific to security, but when you work with a SaaS provider, again, the SaaS vendor is in charge of securing the infrastructure, the data centers, whatever they use to power the service that you subscribe to. You're still in charge of protecting and making sure that you're configuring correctly in the way you use SaaS. If you look at the MITRE attack matrix for cloud, this is just an example, you can find many. You can find, I didn't even know they existed until not long ago. You can find these for Office 365, for different type of SaaS services that are becoming really popular. You see, you don't really have a lot of techniques here, but it's much smaller, again, because the focus here is much more narrower, that really related to what's important to you, the workloads that are important to you as a company that you run on the cloud. And this is another trend that you may have heard of, and I thought about spending a minute talking about. In the concept of SAM, ingesting data, gaining central visibility, the challenge has always been, can I afford it? There is always a new log source. You want to gain visibility across your entire attack surface. You start talking about ingesting application logs. The cost keeps going up and up and up. If your company is doing well, the volume of logs is going up because you have more customers, you have more usage, and so on. So what are vendors doing to manage that cost? So there is this trend that many refer to, including us, as serverless. But what serverless truly means is using the cloud as the cloud was designed to be used. If you use the cloud as the cloud is designed to be used, you decouple storage from compute. And the idea behind this is that you don't want to pay to keep data searchable just because you need to have it searchable. You want to be able to store data in an object store like S3 and use compute to search it only when you need it and pay for that compute only while you're searching the data. So this is a trend that many vendors are following that will end up reducing your cost. You only pay for what you need. And this is in a way a necessary evil because many SAM vendors, they got to a point where you can no longer scale them, both financially and technologically, because you need so much compute that is no longer affordable to be able to gain all that visibility across the entire attack surface. Right, time to protection. So once you have all the data stored in a central place, how can you prevent, detect, and stop bad actors before damage is done? Again, MITRE ATT&CK. If you look at each column of the MITRE ATT&CK, each column of the MITRE ATT&CK is a stage of the cyber kill chain, starting from reconnaissance, ending in exfiltration or impact. The goal of us, security professional, is to prevent or detect as left as possible in this matrix. You want to be able to detect before any damage is done. So how do you do that? Using a layers approach. Starting at the endpoint or at the edge, right? You see the EDR, EPP industry has become really, really popular because many attacks start at the endpoint. Whenever you have an employee downloading a file, double-clicking on that file, opening an email attachment that may include malware. So that's the best way to start, right? You want to make sure that you have a security in place at the endpoint. Not everything is malware, though. If you look at MITRE ATT&CK TDPs, each of those techniques, they usually require visibility at the kernel level. What do I mean with that? Process, file changes, registry changes, network activity, all that visibility are events that are not natively logged by an operating system. If you look up the Windows event logs, or if you look at the Linux logs, those are not events that are logged natively by an operating system. So that same endpoint sensor that you install to do the protection on the endpoint can stream telemetry back to a SAM, and the SAM can look then for the known bad type of TTPs, again, going back to MITRE ATT&CK. This is an example. Execution of a file written or modified by a PDF reader. This is not malware, but this is an event that should never happen. And the only way to catch this is to get that level of telemetry from an endpoint. So this is what many refer to as XDR today, extended detection and response. You not only need to have prevention at the endpoint itself with an endpoint agent, but you need to augment that with telemetry that you generate on the endpoint into a SAM and using detection rules to look for type of events like this one, and the majority of MITRE ATT&CK techniques that require this type of telemetry. When I work with customers and I ask them, what are the top use cases that you have in mind? What keeps you up at night, that expression, but really it's like, what are you the most worried about? What type of attacks do you care the most about? And the number one answer I always get, malicious insiders, compromised accounts. How do you detect those? This is where machine learning comes into play. Here you're not looking for the known bad, those MITRE ATT&CK techniques, or for malware type of activity, but you're looking for anything that looks different than what was seen before. The idea here is to look at past history, user behavior, or entity behavior, unusual processes that pop up on a host, unusual network connections that starts happening, and flag those. Those are referred to as anomalies. So that's a third layer of approach. And again, you need all of these, right? You want to start preventing on the endpoint, stream from the endpoint to a SAM, use detection rules mapped to MITRE ATT&CK to detect those techniques, and overlay machine learning on the top of that. And lastly, threat hunting. Threat hunting is what everyone would like to do, but very few get to do because they're too busy doing everything else, dealing with fires. And the idea behind threat hunting is, I want to just look around and see if I find something that looks bad. But you don't really start with an alert. It requires a lot of expertise, right? Because you kind of need to know does this look suspicious or not? And again, it's like I work with many organizations, And only the most government organizations are those usually that have the skill set to do it. Larger enterprises, they all want to do it, but they're so busy dealing with the daily fire to have the free time to get to do some threat hunting. And lastly, you may or may not have noticed, maybe it's in the middle of the screen. So I put like an arrow going left. There is this movement that finally is gaining traction. It's called the shift left movement. The idea is that what if we spend some time before we release some software to make sure that we secure it, that we think about security before we release it, when we configure it, instead of trying to just release the software that comes from engineering and then we'll worry about security later. So what about cloud? So we mentioned that cloud is becoming really popular. Different levels of maturity, but different organizations are moving workloads to the cloud. It's very easy to stand up workloads in the cloud, but how do you protect those workloads? Kubernetes is used a lot as a means to convert your applications in a way that can be easily moved from on-prem to the cloud, from one cloud provider to the other. And it's becoming, especially in the West, basically the de facto standard to deploy applications. And Kubernetes is becoming really popular, but again, it's new to many, right? And Shadow Server, they estimate that the majority of Kubernetes servers that you can reach on the internet allow some level of access. And Gartner estimates that through 2025, pretty much all the cloud breaches will be traced back to preventable misconfigurations. So think about that. So cloud, super powerful, new to many. It makes it very easy to deploy workloads. But it also adds a lot of risk because people don't really know how to configure it correctly. It's very easy to not click on a checkbox, miss something, and open up something to the world. So, have you heard of CSPM, some of you? So this is becoming popular in this context, Cloud Security Posture Management, and there is no magic to it. CIS came up with a set of benchmarks. Think of them as best practices for configuring the cloud or for configuring Kubernetes in a secure way. And this type of technology basically does scans on your Kubernetes servers or on your cloud provider's API, and it comes back with a set of findings. These are all opportunities to secure your configuration in the cloud. So very easy to do, and this is something that can really help you all to make sure that what you deploy in the cloud is configured correctly. Again, CSPM, yet another acronym, but it's very important to make sure that what you deploy in the cloud is secure. All right, I only have a few minutes left. So the last thing is operational efficiency. How to do more with less? Why do I say that? So if you look, we are fortunate to work in this industry. So if you're all here today, if you're either working in cybersecurity or you want to be in cybersecurity, there has always been a very high demand for cybersecurity professionals. Everywhere I turn, I see a new cybersecurity bootcamp or program to train cybersecurity analysts because there is such a high demand for cybersecurity analysts. So this is the outlook for the US. So you see we have a little bit over 1 million cybersecurity employed professionals, and we're looking for close to 800,000 of them. So a lot of demand, and specifically for Wisconsin, right? So 11,500, I guess a big part of that number is here today, right? A big part of you is here today. And we have like close to 8,000 job openings. So there are a lot of empty chairs close to you. And if you think about who do you think is going to fill those empty chairs? Likely someone that doesn't have a lot of experience, unless you steal someone from another company. So And we know that we cannot really move much the people aspect, right? So what can we do when it comes to technology or changing the processes to help us reduce risk? So the first thing, try to find solutions that are easy to use, right? If you find a solution that requires a steep learning curve, it's going to be harder, it's going to take longer to train new team members to use it. Speed is a factor. That's why many come to us as Elastic, for example, because we're known for the speed of search. And if you think about what you do when you do investigations, you're searching through data. If you have to wait an hour before you get search results back, how many investigations do you think you can do in a day? Right, that limits you. Less products. So this is, we're seeing it clearly with this recession, however you want to call it, that is happening today. Organizations are becoming more conscious in the way they spend money. Many organizations I work with, they have new policies in place. If you want to add a new product, it must at least replace a product that you already have. We don't want to add any more. And I covered it earlier, there are already way too many products that we have to use and learn how to use. SOAR is becoming popular, security, orchestration, automation, and response. The big promise of SOAR in the early days was, I want to automate response. Basically, I want to automate this job of security analyst. No one does it. I work with many organizations. Everyone wants it, but when it comes to the time when they say, okay, do you want to fully automate this response? No one wants to do it because it's too risky. The human always has to be in the loop to some extent. But what SOAR is becoming popular for is automating tier 1 tasks. So really tier 1 analysis, things that our tier 1 analysts have to do over and over, we want to be able to automate those. Out-of-the-box content, find solutions that provide detections that you don't have to create, leverage work of threat researchers that develop it, and shorten time, free time to improve. Like companies like Google and others, they give their engineers 20% of their time a week to work on a project that can help them be more efficient. And think about the benefits of doing that. If you keep doing what you're doing and you're always very busy, things will never change. But if you stop and take some time, even just a couple of hours every week, and say, okay, what can I do to help me going forward that can help you, can help the organization? And then MSSPs are becoming popular as well. And I'm out of time. I don't have time to recap, but thank you for joining. And sorry I had to speed up a little bit. And no worries about this, no worries. And again, enjoy the rest of the conference.